Okay, so if you're a parent, this topic,
Yeah.
it probably hits your panic button almost immediately.
Yeah.
We are diving into childhood masturbation today. It's a subject that, well, it often causes a lot of shame, confusion, maybe even fear, but usually not in the child, right? It's in the grown-up who discovers it.
That really is the core challenge, isn't it? The sources you've given us, they're specifically designed to kind of neutralize that panic reaction.
Yeah.
We're looking at a pretty comprehensive evidence-based roadmap today.
Right.
And our mission really is to help you transform that, that moment of discovery from something potentially anxious into, well, a constructive lesson, something about body awareness, privacy, and importantly, healthy self-acceptance.
And looking at the executive summary, the core principle just jumps out. It makes it incredibly clear. This behavior, it's fundamentally common, it's non-pathological, and it's developmentally appropriate.
Yeah.
It's not some kind of moral failure or a medical condition that needs fixing. So the absolute central recommendation for you listening is to try and stay calm and consciously avoid making the child feel any shame or guilt.
Yeah, and to help you actually achieve that calm response, we really need to focus on two main areas today. First, we have to understand the why behind it, the developmental context.
Okay.
And second, we're going to walk you through a step-by-step guide, for immediate action when it happens, and also for the longer-term communication piece. It's about turning that knowledge into something practical.
Okay, so let's start with that context, because like you said, understanding the timeline, the why, that seems like the single biggest fear buster here. This behavior usually isn't driven by adult-like sexual feelings until much, much later, right?
That's absolutely key.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start right at the beginning. Infancy and early childhood, so maybe 0 to 4 years old. A really key point in the data is that in this age group, it's really just pure, innocent exploration of sensation. It's often categorized as self-soothing.
Self-soothing.
Yeah, if you connect it to the bigger picture, think about thumb sucking or how fascinated a baby might be with their own toes or fingers. It's similar.
Okay.
They really don't have any concept of social rules or taboos at that age. It's purely about physical discovery.
Wait, hang on. Is it really the same as thumb sucking? Because that sounds like, well, maybe a big leap for a nervous parent to accept.
That's a fair question. It's the same in motivation, perhaps, but obviously not the same action, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Motivation, right?
The motivation is internal. It's about relief or sensation discovery. It's not about external or relational desire like in adults.
Got it.
And this behavior might continue through early to middle childhood, say the 5 to 8-year-olds, still often for comfort or maybe boredom or even anxiety relief. But here's the crucial developmental shift. This age group starts to gain an emerging awareness of privacy. That's really the key difference between, say, a 3-year-old doing it and an 8-year-old. That awareness starts to kick in.
And that emerging awareness, that gives us the foundation for how we talk about it later, right?
Exactly.
And then inevitably, we hit pre-adolescence and adolescence itself, so 9 years and up.
Correct. And that's when the behavior, it starts to connect more explicitly to puberty, to hormones, and those emerging sexual feelings.
Right.
At this stage, the sources are clear. They define it as an intentional and very normal part of understanding one's own body and sexual response. It's considered a healthy aspect of development.
So the experts really agree on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The consensus among major professional bodies, you mentioned the American Academy of Pediatrics earlier, it's overwhelming. This behavior is seen as a normal part of human development and isn't physically or psychologically harmful in a typical context.
Okay, that normalization is essential background knowledge. But the real test, I think, for most parents is that potentially terrifying moment of discovery, when you walk into the room unexpectedly.
Yes.
And the sources really stress that your immediate, gut reaction can leave a lasting impression on the child.
It absolutely can.
So let's walk through that immediate response framework. What do you do?
Okay, so step 1 is entirely about you, the parent. Manage your own reaction.
Easier said than done, maybe?
Definitely. But crucial, you must pause. Just take a breath. This is the moment where you literally have to kind of swallow your shock or surprise. You need to consciously resist that urge to gasp or yell or, abruptly tell them to stop. The goal is to maintain a completely neutral demeanor. No shock, no anger, no visible embarrassment, just neutral.
I imagine that first step, just pausing and staying neutral is maybe the hardest part to pull off gracefully, especially if you're surprised.
It really is, which is exactly why practicing that pause, mentally rehearsing it even, can be critical.
Okay.
So once you've got your own reaction sort of in check, step 2 is context. Assess the context. You need to distinguish immediately, is this happening in a private space, like their bedroom or the bathroom, or is it in a public space, like the living room or kitchen?
And why does that matter so much?
Because that distinction fundamentally changes the message you need to deliver.
Okay. So if the child is in a public space, that leads us to step 3, which you call the gentle intervention.
Exactly. If it's public, the entire focus has to shift to privacy, not to prohibiting the act itself. That's key.
Right.
You need to use a calm, low, very matter-of-fact voice. You might say something simple like, "Hey, I see you're touching your body." That's something people usually do in a private place, like your bedroom.
Okay, simple and direct.
Simple, direct, non-judgmental. And then immediately, step 3 kind of concludes with redirection. Offer an alternative activity, maybe, or simply suggest they go have some private time in the room.
Okay, and this is where that crucial warning comes in, the one that the source materials list so explicitly. The phrases parents absolutely must avoid.
Yes, because these instill that lifelong shame and guilt we talked about.
So things like,
Definitely do not say, "That's dirty," or "Stop that right now." Never say, "Good girls don't do that," or "Good boys don't do that." And avoid things like, "Don't touch yourself there."
why are those specific phrases so damaging, though? What's the mechanism?
Because they teach the child that a natural part of their own body, and maybe a natural feeling they have, is inherently wrong or shameful or even sinful.
Wow.
It links that self-exploration, maybe even pleasure, to moral failure. And that can lead to really deep-seated guilt, negative body image, and cause issues with intimacy much later in life.
Wow.
The message absolutely has to be about location privacy, not about morality.
Location, not morality. That makes perfect sense. Okay, and step 4, that handles the situation where the child is already in a private space, like their room.
Right. So if you walk in on your child in their room, that's what we call the unobtrusive exit.
Unobtrusive exit. I like that.
Yeah. The best response here is actually modeling the very privacy you want them to adopt. You just simply say, "Oh, excuse me," and immediately back out. Give them their space.
Okay.
And then, for the future, you absolutely must establish the habit of knocking and waiting for a response before you enter their private space. You teach privacy by respecting it. All right, so once that immediate moment, that discovery has passed, we need to move to proactive communication.
Right, the follow-up conversation.
Exactly. And this conversation must happen at a neutral time, totally separate from the incident itself, so it doesn't feel like a lecture or a scolding.
Good point.
And the sources really emphasize the absolute necessity of using correct anatomical terms, penis, vulva, vagina, buttocks. Using the right words fosters body positivity and avoids confusion or shame around body parts.
Okay, so how does that conversation maybe differ depending on the child's age? What are the key messages we want to get across?
Good question. So for a younger child, maybe 3 to 6 years old, the script really focuses heavily on normalization and location. You're basically validating their curiosity, but you're also clearly defining the rule about place. You might say something like, "It's perfectly normal to be curious about your body and what feels good. And it's okay to touch yourself there, but it's something we do when we are alone in our room, in our private space." Keep it simple.
Simple, clear. Okay, and for the slightly older child, say 7 to 12?
Yeah, that conversation can shift a bit more towards acknowledging their growth, inviting questions, while still reinforcing that privacy rule.
How might that sound?
You could say something like, "It's really normal as you grow up to explore your body and maybe wonder about things. We can always talk about any questions you have. But just remember that some things, like touching yourself for comfort or curiosity, are things we do when we are alone." Reinforce the privacy boundary.
This sounds like the perfect entry point, actually, for reinforcing those broader body safety rules we often talk about.
Absolutely. It's an ideal teachable moment. You can immediately pivot or add on that their private parts belong to them alone.
Right.
That permission is required for anyone else to touch them, the exception being maybe doctors for health reasons, and always with a parent present. And just as crucially, they must understand they should not touch others' private parts either.
So you're normalizing their own behavior while clearly establishing boundaries and bodily autonomy.
Precisely. It connects naturally.
Okay, and what about adolescents? Teenagers, they presumably understand the pubertal connection a bit more.
Yeah, for teenagers, the conversation really normalizes the behavior explicitly as, a healthy aspect of growing up, maybe even managing stress sometimes. The focus might shift slightly towards hygiene, perhaps, but the primary goal with teens is really maintaining your status as that trusted, non-judgmental source, keeping the door open for any questions they might have about sexuality, dating, relationships, anything.
Okay, so we spend a lot of time stressing that this behavior is, generally normal.
Yeah.
But your sources also clarify, and this is important, that there are times when it might be a symptom of something else going on.
That's right. It's crucial to make that distinction.
So we need to give listeners that critical context. When might a pattern actually warrant professional attention?
Okay. So the indicators for what's considered typical behavior are usually quite consistent. We're talking about occasional self-touching. It happens mainly when the child is in private.
Right.
It tends to decrease significantly once they're redirected or taught about privacy. And it often occurs when they're maybe winding down for sleep or bored or perhaps a bit stressed. That's the typical picture.
Okay, so what are the big red flags then? If a parent is watching their child and starting to feel worried, what specific patterns might suggest this isn't just normal exploration, but maybe a coping mechanism for a deeper issue, like stress or anxiety or, God forbid, abuse?
Yeah, there are basically 4 major indicators that would signal needing a consultation, probably with a pediatrician or a child psychologist.
Okay, what's the first one?
First is compulsive behavior. This means the child seems genuinely unable to stop. They're engaging in the act frequently, maybe even in public places, despite being told about privacy, and it's starting to interfere with their normal activities, like schoolwork or playing with friends.
Okay, compulsive. Got it.
Second, look for signs of an underlying issue or distress. Is the behavior accompanied by other significant signs of emotional difficulty? Things like severe anxiety, withdrawing from friends or family, unusual aggression, maybe new or worsening sleep problems.
So the behavior is linked to other concerning changes.
Exactly. It suggests the behavior might be serving as a sort of desperate form of self-regulation because they're distressed about something else.
Okay, and the third and fourth red flags are more physical and maybe environmental.
That's right. Third, is the behavior physically harmful? Is the child actually causing self-injury, like leaving bruises or chafing themselves significantly in the process?
Ouch. Okay.
And fourth, we look for developmentally inappropriate sexualized behavior. Now, this is distinct from simple curiosity. This means things like simulating adult sexual acts or maybe coercively involving other children in the act in a way that goes way beyond just exploring.
Right.
If any of those 4 signs, compulsive, linked to distress, physically harmful, or developmentally inappropriate sexualized behavior, if any of those are present, then it's really not just about teaching privacy anymore. It's about seeking help to address an underlying emotional or behavioral need. So let's just sort of synthesize the ultimate payoff or the consequence of the parental response here. By taking the advice from these sources, you are, in a way, determining one of 2 potential futures for your child's relationship with their body and with you.
Okay, so let's paint those 2 pictures. The shame-based response, first, that gasping judgmental reaction we talked about earlier. What does that lead to long-term?
Well, the consequences can be pretty significant. We're talking chronic guilt, potentially a deeply negative body image, maybe even leading to poor sexual health or dysfunction later in life. There can be this lingering belief that talking about their body or their feelings is somehow wrong or unsafe.
And critically.
And perhaps most critically, it often severs those crucial lines of communication. They learn very quickly not to come to you with difficult or sensitive topics.
Which is the opposite of what we want.
Exactly. Conversely, the calm educational response, the one we've been outlining it, fosters a healthy body image, self-acceptance, and confidence. It clearly establishes you, the parent, as a trusted, non-judgmental source of information.
And the impact on the relationship.
It strengthens the parent-child bond dramatically. It builds trust.
Okay, this has been, I think, a deeply practical guide to make sure everyone listening walks away with the most actionable steps. Let's quickly review those summary recommendations.
That's a good idea.
All right, number 1. Stay calm. Manage your own reaction first. That pause is key. 2. Normalize the behavior. Remember, it's typically development, not deviation.
Right.
3. Teach privacy, not prohibition. Location is the rule, not morality.
A crucial distinction.
4. Use correct language. Use proper anatomical terms to promote body positivity.
Yes.
5. Seize the educational opportunity. Use it to reinforce those body safety rules.
Great moment for.
6. Keep communication open. Be that non-judgmental, trusted resource for them.
Always.
And finally, 7, know when to seek help. Watch for those red flags we discussed, the compulsive or distressed behavior pattern.
Absolutely. Know when it's potentially something more.
Okay.
And maybe just a final provocative thought for you to carry forward from this. The foundation you lay right here, by responding calmly, openly, and non-judgmentally to this, relatively early stage of body exploration.
Yeah.
That is the exact same foundation you're going to need for later, often far more complex conversations.
Oh, like what?
Like talking about consent, healthy relationships, comprehensive sexual health down the road. Mastering the lesson of teaching privacy calmly now actually prepares both you and your child for navigating adolescence together.
That's a really powerful connection. Excellent deep dive today.
Glad we could cover it.
So, apply this knowledge, listeners. Remember that challenging moments, when handled with calm intent, really can be the best teachable moments. We'll see you on the next deep dive.